Dr. Samuel Ortega had not slept in 5 days. His eyes were red and his hand shook from too much coffee and too little rest. But he could not stop. Not now. Not when he was so close. The underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains hummed with activity. Scientists from every nation worked side by side, studying pieces of Vathy technology recovered from destroyed ships and fallen soldiers. They shared data freely, without secrets, without competition. The survival of humanity depended on their success. Dr. Nicole Vasquez placed another data chip on Samuel's desk. This came from the downed landing craft in California, the one Colonel Brooks brought down. Samuel grabbed the chip and connected it to his computer. Lines of alien code scrolled across his screen. Most of it was meaningless, written in a language humans had never seen. But Samuel had been working on this puzzle for years. Slowly, piece by piece, he was learning to understand it. "There," he whispered suddenly. "There it is." Nicole leaned over his shoulder. "What did you find?" "The shield frequency." Samuel's voice trembled with excitement. "Every Vathy shield operates on the same harmonic frequency. If we can generate a pulse on the exact opposite frequency, we can neutralize their shields completely." Nicole stared at him. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." For the first time in days, Samuel smiled. "Get me General Nguyen on the line, now." Within hours, the information spread across the planet. Scientists in every country received the data, and began building devices that could generate the counter-frequency. Factories worked around the clock, producing thousands of the pulse generators. 3 days later, human forces launched their first coordinated counterattack. Commander Chris Parker stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution, a nuclear submarine that had been hastily retrofitted for combat in space. It was an ugly ship, covered in welded metal plates and mismatched weapon systems. It should not have been able to fly at all, but human engineers had performed miracles in the past week. 23 similar vessels floated beside the Constitution. They were not warships by galactic standards. They were cobbled together from submarines, aircraft carriers, and anything else that could be made to fly. They were held together by desperate engineering and stubborn hope. They were humanity's first space fleet. "All ships report ready," Chris said into his communicator. "Remember the plan. Stay together. Target their shield generators first. Once the shields are down, hit them with everything we have." The fleet accelerated toward the Vathy carrier group in high orbit. The alien ships detected them immediately. Weapons locked on. The Vathy commanders laughed at the primitive vessels approaching them. They stopped laughing when the pulse generators activated. Across the Vathy fleet, shields flickered and died. For the first time, their hulls were exposed to human weapons. Missiles and railgun rounds slammed into ships that had never felt such impacts. 2 Vathy destroyers exploded in the first minute of battle. On the ground, General Patricia Nguyen coordinated the largest military operation in human history. Forces that had been hiding and fighting guerrilla warfare now attacked openly. With the shield frequency known, human weapons suddenly worked against Vathy armor. In Moscow, Russian tanks rolled through the streets, their shells punching through alien defenses that had seemed invincible days before. In Tokyo, Japanese defense forces pushed the Vathy out of the city center. In Cairo, in Paris, in Sydney, humans took back their cities block by block. Sergeant Alexei Volkov led his unit into a Vathy command post. The aliens inside were not prepared for the attack. They expected to be protected by their shields. They expected humans to still be running and hiding. Alexei kicked open the door and opened fire. His soldiers followed, clearing the building in minutes. They captured equipment, data files, and 3 living Vathy soldiers, the first prisoners taken by human forces. Colonel Katie Brooks, her arms still in a cast from her previous battle, returned to the sky in a new fighter. Her squadron joined dozens of others, attacking Vathy air support across North America. The aliens fought back hard, but they were no longer invincible. "This is for everyone we lost," Katie said as she launched a missile into a Vathy gunship. The ship exploded, raining debris across the desert below. In the Galactic Council chamber, the observers could barely believe what they were seeing. "They cracked the shield technology," Drexen said. His voice was full of wonder. "In less than a standard week, they figured out how to neutralize Vathy's shields. That should be impossible." Delegate Yanara shook her head slowly. "These humans adapt faster than any species I have ever observed. They took enemy technology and turned it against its creators almost immediately." Ambassador Krelvoth watched a human news broadcast. A reporter stood in a liberated city, surrounded by cheering crowds. Behind her, a Vathy flag burned, while humans raised their own banners. "The Vathy are losing," Krelvoth said. "They are actually losing to a primitive species." "They still have orbital superiority," Drexan pointed out. "They could bombard the planet from space, destroy the humans completely." "That would require extinction-class weapons," Yanara said sharply. "Those are forbidden by galactic treaty. Since when have the Vathy cared about treaties?" Silence fell over the chamber. They all knew the answer. On the Vathy flagship, Supreme Commander Thaxrul faced the worst moment of his career. His invasion force had been reduced by half. His ground troops were retreating on every front. His fleet had lost a dozen ships to creatures who had not even known about space travel a generation ago. His officers stood before him, waiting for orders. None of them would meet his eyes. "This cannot continue," Thaxrul said. His voice was cold and hard. "We came here for conquest. If we cannot have conquest, we will have destruction." His tactical officers stepped forward nervously. "Supreme Commander, the extinction protocols are forbidden. The Galactic Council will respond." "The Council does nothing," Thaxrul snapped. "They observe, they record, they never act. By the time they decide to respond, there will be nothing left of this planet but ash." He turned to face the viewing screen, where Earth hung blue and beautiful against the darkness of space. "Prepare the planetary bombardment weapons," he ordered. "If we cannot have this world, no one will." His officers hesitated. What he was ordering was genocide, complete extinction of an entire species. It violated every agreement the Vathy had ever signed. But they were soldiers. They followed orders. "Yes, Supreme Commander," the tactical officer said quietly. "The weapons will be ready in 6 hours." Thaxrul stared at the planet that had caused him so much trouble. 6 hours, he whispered. "In 6 hours, the humans will be nothing but a memory." He did not notice the Council observation satellite recording everything. He did not know that his words were being transmitted across the galaxy in real time. But the Galactic Council heard him, and for the first time in 10,000 years, they began to consider doing something other than watching. The Galactic Council chamber had not seen such chaos in 1,000 years. Delegates shouted over each other. Holographic displays showed the Vathy fleet charging extinction-class weapons over Earth. The countdown was visible on every screen. 5 hours remained. Ambassador Krelvoth tried to restore order. "Please, delegates, we must maintain proper procedure. The Council has rules about interference in primitive worlds." Delegate Yanara stood up, her blue scales flashing with anger. "Rules? You speak of rules while the Vathy prepare to murder 8 billion sentient beings? These humans have shown more courage and adaptability than species that have traveled the stars for millennia. And we will sit here and watch them die because of rules? The principle of non-interference has served us for 10,000 years, another delegate argued. If we act now, where does it end? Do we interfere every time a species faces extinction? Perhaps we should, Yanara shot back. The argument continued. Voices grew louder. Time grew shorter. On Earth, Humanity knew nothing of the debate happening across the galaxy. They only knew that they were winning their war, pushing the Vathy back on every front. They did not know that victory might cost them everything. President Daniel Cortez stood in a command center beneath the Nevada desert. Around him, officers tracked the progress of the counteroffensive. The news was good. City after city was being liberated. The Vathy were in retreat. Then a young analyst raised her hand. Her face had gone pale. "Sir, we are detecting a massive energy buildup in the Vathy flagship." General Nguyen moved to her station. "What kind of energy buildup?" "It matches the profile of weapons designed for planetary bombardment." "Sir, they are going to burn the Earth." The room went silent. All the victories, all the sacrifices, all the hope they had built meant nothing if the Vathy chose to destroy the planet from orbit. President Cortez closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his face was calm. "How long do we have?" 5 hours. Maybe less. Is there anything we can do? Can our new fleet reach them in time? General Nguyen checked the data and shook her head. "Our ships are too far away. Even at maximum speed, they could not intercept the flagship before it fires." President Cortez nodded slowly. He had known this might happen. He had known from the beginning that fighting back might mean dying. "Then we use the time we have left," he said quietly. "Keep fighting, keep pushing them back. If we are going to die, we die on our feet, not on our knees." In cities around the world, the news spread. People learned that extinction was hours away. Some cried, some prayed, some held their loved ones close. But nobody surrendered. Nobody stopped fighting. If these were humanity's last hours, they would make them count. In the Galactic Council chamber, the argument had reached a breaking point. Delegates were ready to come to blows. The clock showed 4 hours remaining. Then Ambassador Krelvoth did something unprecedented. He stood up, walked to the center of the chamber, and raised his hand for silence. "I have watched these humans for weeks now," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "I have seen them unite in the face of destruction. I have seen them fight with courage that defies explanation. I have seen wounded soldiers return to battle, civilians sacrifice themselves for strangers, enemies become allies overnight." He paused, looking around the chamber. "Think about what they have accomplished. With primitive technology and no experience in galactic warfare, they fought the Vathy to a standstill. They cracked shield frequencies that our own scientists struggled to understand. They adapted and improvised and refused to give up." He stepped forward, his black eyes intense. "Now imagine these humans in 1,000 years. Imagine them with our technology, our resources, our knowledge. Imagine what they will become if we allow them to survive and grow." The chamber was silent now. Every delegate listened. "They could be the greatest species the galaxy has ever known," Krelvoth continued, "or they could be the greatest threat we have ever faced. But either way, can we afford to let the Vathy destroy them before we find out? Can we let such potential die here, today, because of rules written 10,000 years ago?" Delegate Yanara stood up beside him. "I call for a vote. Immediate intervention to prevent planetary extinction." A vote happened faster than any in Council history. One by one, the delegates raised their hands in favor. The decision was unanimous. Within an hour, a combined Galactic Council fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system. 12 species, hundreds of ships, the greatest military force the galaxy had seen in generations. They arrived just as the Vathy flagship began its final charging sequence. Supreme Commander Thaxerol stared at his sensors in disbelief. "That is impossible. The Council never interferes." "They are hailing us," his communications officer reported. "They demand that we stand down immediately." Thaxerol's jaw tightened. He had come too far to retreat now. He had lost too many soldiers, too much pride. His career was ruined regardless of what happened next. We will destroy this planet and deal with the consequences later. The Council fleet opened fire. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The Vathy were outnumbered and outgunned. Their ships, already damaged from fighting humans, could not withstand the combined assault of 12 spacefaring civilizations. Faxrul's flagship was disabled, but not destroyed. Council forces boarded the vessel and took the Supreme Commander into custody. He would face trial for his crimes. The remaining Vathy ships retreated from the Sol system. The invasion was over. On Earth, people watched the sky as the fighting ended. They saw the Council ships descending through the atmosphere, not as conquerors, but as witnesses to what humanity had accomplished. Ambassador Krelvoth landed his shuttle in Washington, D.C., in a plaza surrounded by the ruins of buildings and the wreckage of battle. President Cortez, General Nguyen, Colonel Brooks, and representatives from every nation waited to greet him. The ambassador stepped out of his shuttle and approached the human leaders. He was tall and strange, with silver skin and eyes like pools of darkness. But when he looked at the humans before him, there was respect in his gaze. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our greetings, Krelvoth said, and our apologies for not acting sooner. We watched your struggle from afar. We saw what you did, what you sacrificed, what you became. We believe humanity has earned a place among the stars. President Cortez looked at the alien ambassador, then at the destroyed city around him. He thought of everyone who had died, everyone who had fought, everyone who had refused to give up. We are grateful for your help, he said carefully, but we have been through much. Our world needs to heal. Our people need time. Krelvoth nodded. There is no hurry. When you are ready, the Council will welcome you. Colonel Brooks stepped forward. Her arm was still in a cast, her uniform stained with the dirt and blood of a dozen battles. She looked the ambassador directly in his alien eyes. We appreciate the offer, she said, but understand this. We did not survive because of your help. We survived because we refused to die. We will join your council when we choose to, on our terms, as equals, not before. The ambassador smiled, an expression he had learned from watching humans. We expected nothing less. He returned to his shuttle and departed. The council fleet withdrew, leaving humanity alone on their wounded but free planet. President Cortez stood among the ruins, surrounded by people who had become heroes. He looked up at the sky where alien ships had threatened extinction just hours ago. What do we do now? General Nguyen asked. It was a tired smile, but it was real. Now we rebuild, he said. We heal, we grow stronger, and someday, when we are ready, we go out there and show the universe what humanity can really do. Around him, his people nodded. They had faced the worst the galaxy could offer. They had survived, and they were just getting started. The Galactic Council had watched many invasions. They had seen proud civilizations crumble in hours. They had watched entire species beg for mercy that never came. They knew what to expect when a superior force arrived at a primitive world. They expected panic. They expected chaos. They expected surrender. What they saw on Earth was something entirely different. Within 2 hours of the Vathy ultimatum, President Daniel Cortez was speaking with every major world leader. The video conference included faces from nations that had been enemies for generations. Russian President Viktor Petrov sat beside his generals in Moscow. Chinese Premier Liu Wei watched from Beijing. The leaders of India, Pakistan, Israel, Iran, and dozens of other nations filled the screen. Old hatreds did not matter now. Old wars were forgotten. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth was looking at the same enemy. We have 4 hours, President Cortez said. We can surrender and become slaves, or we can fight and die free. I know what I choose. What do you choose? President Petrov leaned forward. His face was hard, but there was fire in his eyes. Russia does not surrender. Not to anyone. Not ever. Premier Liu Wei nodded slowly. China stands with humanity. Our forces are at your disposal. One by one, every leader spoke. The words were different, but the message was the same. They would fight. They would resist. They would not go quietly into the darkness. General Patrician Yuan began coordinating the impossible. Military forces that had trained to fight each other now worked together. American satellite data flowed to Russian command centers. Chinese cyber warfare units connected with European intelligence networks. Indian and Pakistani soldiers received orders to stand together. It was messy. It was chaotic. It was also the most remarkable thing humanity had ever done. At Edwards Air Force Base in California, Colonel Katie Brooks received her orders. She was a pilot, one of the best in the world. She had flown experimental aircraft that most people did not know existed. Now she was being asked to lead humanity's first strike against an alien invasion force. She gathered her pilots in the briefing room. They were young, scared, and brave. They looked at her with eyes that asked questions she could not answer. I will not lie to you, Katie said. The odds are bad. These ships are bigger and faster than anything we have. Most of us probably will not come back. She paused, looking at each face. But I have been flying for 20 years. I have pushed aircraft to their limits. I know what human pilots can do. We are creative. We are unpredictable. We do not follow rules when rules do not work. That is our advantage. They expect us to fight like everyone else they have conquered. We will not. A young pilot named Danny Reeves raised his hand. What exactly is the plan, Colonel? Katie smiled. The plan is to make them regret ever coming here. Across the world, similar scenes played out. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Civilians volunteered for any duty they could perform. Factories that made cars switched to making weapons. Scientists dropped everything to study the alien ships hovering above their cities. In a secret facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Samuel Ortega worked without sleep. He was a physicist, one of the brightest minds on Earth. For years he had studied fragments of alien technology recovered from crash sites that the government had hidden from the public. Now that knowledge might save humanity. His assistant, Dr. Nicole Vasquez, handed him another cup of coffee. Sam, you have been awake for 30 hours. You need to rest. I will rest when we are not about to be enslaved, Samuel replied, his eyes fixed on the data screens. There has to be a weakness. Every technology has a weakness. I just need to find it. The Vathy watched humanity's response with confusion. Supreme Commander Thaxrel stood on his bridge, reading reports from his scouts on the ground. They are not surrendering, his tactical officer reported. They are building defenses, mobilizing military forces, evacuating civilians from major cities. Fools, Thaxrel said. Their weapons cannot hurt us. Their defenses will fall in minutes. Why do they bother? His officer hesitated. Perhaps they do not understand how outmatched they are. Then we will teach them. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Krelvoth watched the data with growing fascination. He had never seen anything like this. Look at their communications, he said to Delegate Yanara. Nations that have been enemies for centuries are sharing military secrets. They are combining their forces without hesitation. Yanara studied the data. This is unusual. Most primitive species fracture under threat. They fight among themselves for resources or try to make deals with the invaders. These humans are doing the opposite. Their unity is impressive, Krelvoth admitted, but it will not save them. The Vathy have superior technology, superior numbers, superior everything. Unity alone cannot overcome such odds. Of course, Yanara agreed, but something in her voice suggested doubt. Back on Earth, the 6 hours were almost over. In cities around the world, people gathered in the streets. Not to panic, not to flee. They gathered to watch, to wait, to support each other. In New York City, a crowd of thousands stood in Times Square, looking up at the massive Vathy ship that hovered above them. It was a simple song, an old song, one that almost everyone knew. Others joined in. Soon the entire crowd was singing together. In Moscow, people lit candles and placed them in their windows. In Tokyo, families gathered in parks, holding hands. In Lagos, in Mumbai, in Rio de Janeiro, humanity stood together and waited for whatever came next. President Cortez addressed the world one final time before the deadline expired. "I do not know what will happen in the next hours," he said. "I do not know if we will survive, but I know this: we are human. We have faced darkness before. We have faced enemies who thought they could destroy us. We are still here. Whatever happens, remember who we are. Remember what we have survived. Remember that we do not give up. We do not surrender. We fight." He paused, his voice steady. "They came here thinking they would find easy prey. They were wrong. Today, we show the universe what it means to be human." The 6 hours ended. The Vathy launched their invasion, and humanity, united for the first time in its history, rose to meet them. In the council chamber, Ambassador Krelvoth leaned forward in his seat. "This," he said quietly, "will be interesting to watch." He had no idea how right he was. The Vathy had conquered 43 worlds. They had perfect strategies, perfect discipline, and perfect confidence. When their landing craft descended toward Earth's surface, they expected the invasion to follow the same pattern as all the others. They expected wrong. The first wave of Vathy soldiers landed outside Moscow. 10,000 warriors in heavy armor, carrying weapons that could vaporize a human in a single shot. They marched toward the city in perfect formation, ready to crush any resistance. Russian forces met them in the frozen fields. The humans should have been destroyed in minutes. Their tanks and missiles were primitive compared to Vathy technology. Their soldiers wore thin armor that offered little protection. But the humans did not fight the way the Vathy expected. Sergeant Alexei Volkov had grown up in these frozen lands. He knew every hill, every river, every forest. When the Vathy advanced in their perfect lines, he led his unit through paths that did not appear on any map. They struck from the shadows, hit hard, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. The Vathy shields could stop bullets and missiles, but they had never faced humans who buried explosives beneath the snow and detonated them as the aliens walked over them. They had never faced snipers who waited for hours in frozen holes, targeting weak points in their armor. They had never faced soldiers who used the land itself as a weapon. By the end of the first day, the Vathy had taken Moscow, but they had lost 3,000 soldiers doing it. In all their previous conquests combined, they had never lost so many on a single day. Supreme Commander Thaxrel received the reports with disbelief. "How is this possible? Their weapons are primitive." "They are not fighting conventionally," his tactical officer explained. "They use ambush tactics. Hit and run attacks. They hide among civilian populations. They use their knowledge of local terrain to avoid our superior forces." "Then burn the terrain," Thaxrel ordered. "Burn their cities, burn their forests. Leave them nowhere to hide." The Vathy began destroying everything in their path, but even this did not break human resistance. Instead, it made it stronger. In the jungles of Vietnam, fighters who had resisted foreign invaders for generations turned their expertise against the aliens. They built traps in the trees. They dug tunnels beneath the earth. Vathy patrols entered the jungle and never came out. In the mountains of Afghanistan, warriors who had fought against the greatest military powers on Earth now faced a new enemy. The Vathy sent entire battalions into those mountains. The humans knew every cave, every path, every place where an ambush could succeed. The battalions were destroyed. In the deserts of Iraq and the streets of Baghdad, fighters who had learned urban warfare through years of conflict made every building a fortress. The Vathy had to fight for every block, every house, every room. Their casualties climbed higher and higher. Colonel Katie Brooks led her squadron of modified fighter jets against a Vathy landing craft over California. The alien ship was massive, protected by shields that should have been impenetrable. Human missiles bounced off without effect. But Katie had studied the enemy. She had noticed that the shields flickered for a split second when the ship fired its own weapons. She ordered her pilots to wait, to dodge, to stay alive until the perfect moment. When the landing craft fired its main cannon at a target on the ground, Katie and her pilots dove straight into the beam's origin point. 2 of her pilots died instantly, but Katie and 3 others made it through the gap in the shields. They fired everything they had into the ship's unprotected hull. The landing craft exploded. It was the first Vathy ship destroyed by human forces. Katie ejected from her damaged fighter and parachuted into enemy territory. She landed hard, breaking her arm. A Vathy patrol found her within an hour. They expected her to surrender. Instead, she pulled a grenade from her vest and charged directly at them. The explosion killed 4 Vathy soldiers and knocked 3 more to the ground. Katie, badly wounded, picked up a fallen alien weapon and kept fighting until a rescue team reached her position. Stories like hers spread across the planet. They gave people hope. In the Galactic Council chamber, the observers watched with growing unease. "The casualty reports are unprecedented," Drexen said. His voice was quiet, almost afraid. "The Vathy have lost 15,000 soldiers in 3 days. That is more than they lost in their entire campaign against the Thessian border worlds." Delegate Yanara studied the footage from Earth. These humans are not following standard combat protocols. They adapt in real time. They invent new tactics during battle. They use their own bodies as weapons when nothing else works. "I have seen a human pilot fly her damaged aircraft directly into a Vathy command center," Drexen continued. "I have seen human soldiers continue fighting after injuries that should have killed them. I have seen civilians attack armed Vathy warriors with nothing but farming tools and bare hands." Ambassador Krelvoth said nothing. He was watching footage of a battle in a place called Stalingrad. No, not Stalingrad. That was an old human war. This was a different city, a different battle. But the ferocity was the same. A human soldier, young and small, ran across open ground under heavy fire. She reached a wounded comrade and dragged him to safety. Then she picked up his weapon and returned fire, killing 2 Vathy soldiers before taking cover. "What drives them?" Krelvoth wondered aloud. "They know they cannot win. They know the odds are impossible. Why do they keep fighting?" No one had an answer. On Earth, Supreme Commander Thaxrul faced a reality he had never imagined. His forces controlled most major cities, but they controlled nothing else. Every road was dangerous. Every building might contain an ambush. Every human, no matter how small or old, was a potential threat. He stood in what had been a human government building, looking out over a burning city. His officers surrounded him, waiting for orders. "What are these creatures?" Thaxrul whispered. "We have conquered species with far greater technology. Species with armies 10 times the size of this one. None of them fought like this. None of them made us pay such a price." His tactical officer approached carefully. "Supreme Commander, our losses are becoming unsustainable. If this continues, we will not have enough forces to hold the territory we have taken." Thaxrul turned to face him. For the first time in his long career, there was something new in his yellow eyes. Fear. "Send a message to the fleet," he said. "Request reinforcements. Request heavy weapons. Request everything we have." He looked back at the burning city, at the smoke rising from 100 battles across the planet. "These humans may be primitive," he said quietly, "but they are not weak. They are not cowards. They are something else, something we have never faced before." Somewhere in the distance, an explosion echoed. Another battle. Another fight. Another group of humans refusing to give up. The war for Earth had only begun. The Vathy Empire had conquered 43 worlds in the Orion arm of the galaxy. They were a species built for war. Their gray skin was thick like armor. Their forearms could wield weapons with deadly skill. For 2,000 years they had spread across the stars, taking what they wanted and destroying anyone who stood in their way. No one had ever stopped them. On the bridge of his flagship, Supreme Commander Thaxrel looked at the blue planet on his viewing screen. It was a small world, covered mostly in water, with green and brown land masses scattered across its surface. The planet's inhabitants called it Earth. "Report," Thaxrel said, his deep voice echoing through the command center. His tactical officer pulled up the data. "The species calls themselves humans. They have primitive technology, basic nuclear weapons, chemical propulsion rockets. They have only sent a few of their kind to their nearest moon. They pose no threat to our forces." Thaxrel made a sound of satisfaction. "How many of them are there?" "Approximately 8 billion. 8 billion workers for our mines and factories," Thaxrel said. "This will be an easy conquest. Prepare the invasion fleet." 300 Vathy battlecruisers moved into position around Earth. Each ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could level cities in seconds. Against such power, the humans had nothing. Far across the galaxy, in a great station that floated between the stars, the Galactic Council gathered to watch. The council was made up of 12 spacefaring species who had agreed long ago to observe but never interfere in the affairs of primitive worlds. They watched civilizations rise and fall. They watched species evolve or go extinct. They kept records of everything, but did nothing to change the natural order. Ambassador Krelvoth of the Selenari was the current head of the council. He was tall and thin, with silver skin and large black eyes. He had seen many worlds fall to conquerors. This would be no different. "The Vathy have entered the Sol system," he announced to the gathered delegates. "They are moving toward the third planet." Delegate Yanara of the Thessian Confederacy shook her head. Her blue scales caught the light as she moved. "Another extinction. These humans have no chance. The Vathy will enslave them within a single rotation." "Perhaps they will simply destroy them," said Drexan, the military analyst from the Kreth Dominion. "The Vathy have been known to eliminate species that resist too strongly." "It matters not," Ambassador Krelvoth said. "We observe, we do not interfere. This is the way of things." The council activated their long-range observation satellites and prepared to watch another world fall. On Earth, everything was about to change. Lieutenant Commander Jake Mitchell was working the night shift at NORAD headquarters, deep inside Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. The facility monitored the skies above North America, watching for missiles and threats. Jake had been doing this job for 15 years. He had never seen anything that truly scared him. Until now. The radar screens lit up with contacts. Not one or two, but hundreds. They were coming from beyond the moon, moving at speeds that should have been impossible. "What the hell is that?" Jake whispered. He grabbed the phone and called his superior. Within minutes, the alert had reached the Pentagon, the White House, and every major military command center on the planet. General Patricia Nguyen was in her office at the Pentagon when the call came. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair cut short. She had served in 3 wars and had seen terrible things. but the photographs that appeared on her screen made her blood run cold. Ships, massive ships, bigger than anything humans had ever built, were descending through Earth's atmosphere. Within an hour, they appeared over every major city on the planet: Washington, Moscow, Beijing, London, Tokyo, New Delhi. The ships blocked out the sun, casting shadows that stretched for miles. People ran into the streets, looking up in terror. Some screamed, some prayed, some simply stood frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. President Daniel Cortez was rushed to a secure bunker beneath the White House. He was a man in his early 60s, with kind eyes and a calm voice. He had been a soldier once, long ago, before politics. Now he faced a threat that no human leader had ever faced before. "What do we know?" he asked his advisors. "Nothing good, sir," General Nguyen said through the video link. "These ships are beyond anything we have. Our weapons will not scratch them." Before anyone could respond, every screen on Earth flickered. Every television, every computer, every phone displayed the same image. A gray-skinned creature with 4 arms and cold yellow eyes stared out at humanity. "I am Supreme Commander Thaxrul of the Vathy Empire," the creature said. His voice was translated into every human language simultaneously. "Your world now belongs to us. You have 6 hours to surrender unconditionally. Your leaders will present themselves to our landing parties. Your military forces will lay down their weapons. Your population will prepare for processing." He paused, and something like a smile crossed his alien face. "If you do not comply, we will begin the destruction of your cities, one by one, until nothing remains. You cannot fight us. You cannot run. You can only obey." The transmission ended. In the bunker beneath the White House, silence filled the room. President Cortez looked at the faces around him. He saw fear. He saw despair. He saw people ready to give up. But deep inside himself, he felt something else, something that surprised him. He felt angry. "Get me aligned to every world leader," he said quietly. "Russia, China, everyone. I do not care about old grudges. I do not care about politics. We need to talk. Now." General Nguyen stared at him. "Sir, you cannot be thinking of fighting. You saw those ships. We have nothing that can stop them." President Cortez stood up straight. "General, I have read our history. I know what we have survived. Plagues, wars, disasters that should have ended us. We are still here. We did not survive all of that, just to surrender to these creatures without a fight." He looked around the room at his people. "6 hours," he said. "They gave us 6 hours. Let us show them what humanity can do in 6 hours." Across the galaxy, Ambassador Krelvoth watched the data streams from Earth with growing confusion. "They are not surrendering," he said slowly. Delegate Yanara moved closer to the screen. "That is impossible. The technological gap is too great. They must know they cannot win." "They are mobilizing," Drexan reported, his voice uncertain. "All of them, every nation. They are preparing to fight." Ambassador Krelvoth felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt curious. "Interesting," he said softly. "Most interesting." The first invasion of Earth was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn something new about the small blue planet and its strange, stubborn inhabitants.